A collection of ghosts. My name is Finian, but most people just call me Finn. This is a story my mother told me about the horrifying experiences my family endured in our old house. It began a long time ago, before I was even born. My grandfather bought a cheap piece of land in a remote area on the outskirts of New Orleans near an old cemetery. He built a small house on that land with his own hands. At first, the family was small, just my grandparents, my father, and his siblings, and life was peaceful. But as my father married my mother and other relatives moved in, the small house became crowded with over 10 people. And that's when the hauntings began. My mother said our house had 3 supernatural hot spots: a hand pump well in the backyard, the toilet at the far end of the house, and the creaky wooden staircase leading to the attic. The first incident happened to my father, right at the water well. He had come home late after drinking and was arguing with my mother. Annoyed, he went to the backyard to pump water for the next day. As he was working the pump handle, he heard a soft giggle. Thinking it was his brothers teasing him, he yelled into the house. But the giggling continued, and on the 3rd time, it echoed up ominously from the dark depths of the well right in front of him. My father was so scared he sobered up instantly and ran back inside. The second incident happened to my mother at the toilet in the back of the house. In the middle of the night, she had a stomach ache and had to use the restroom. While inside, she saw a beam of light like a flashlight, sweeping back and forth across the house from outside. Fearing a burglar, she yelled, "Who's out there? Turn that light off!" The light went out, but immediately after, she heard heavy footsteps running on the tin roof directly above her head. Panicked, she tried to run out, but the door was latched shut from the outside. She screamed for my uncles. The moment their voices called back, "What's wrong, sis?" The door flew open, and my mother stumbled out. As my uncles ran to help her up, she was horrified to see a tall, broad shadow of a man standing right in front of her. But my uncles ran straight through the shadow without even noticing it. After that, my father built an attic loft for more space, and a 3rd ghost appeared there. One night, my mother came home late from work. As she was about to enter the restroom, she froze. Sitting at the bottom of the attic stairs was the apparition of an old woman. She was wearing old-fashioned clothes, huddled over with her arms around her knees, her eyes staring into the distance with a vacant, sorrowful look. My mother was so scared she couldn't look away. The next day, she lit a small prayer candle at the foot of the stairs, and she never saw the old woman again. But the most terrifying ghost was the one my older brother, Declan, encountered. One night, he was in the bathroom after coming home from school. He heard a thump sound coming from above. It was the sound of the wooden hatch to the attic, which was held open by a cable banging up and down. He stepped out to look. He saw the cable being yanked violently, causing the hatch to slam against the ceiling. And then he saw it. A woman's head emerged from the gap, her hair seemingly pulled upward, as if she were being held by her hair from inside the attic. Then the cable snapped. The heavy wooden hatch slammed shut with a bang. Simultaneously, the head fell, tumbling down the stairs with a series of sickening thuds. My brother, in a state of pure terror, ran from the house. But when my parents rushed in, the thing lying on the stairs was not a severed head. It was his old leather soccer ball, a birthday gift he had cherished, which had been missing for 2 weeks. The final incident, the one that I remember most, happened on a full moon night. My mother, a nurse, had to work the night shift at the hospital. At home, it was just me, still a young child, and my grandmother. I woke up from a nap and saw a figure that looked exactly like my mother glide past my bedroom door, heading toward the kitchen. Overjoyed, I thought she had come home early and I ran after her. "Mom, when did you get home?" She didn't answer, just stood silently in the kitchen. I ran up to her, begging her for a snack. Just then, my grandmother called out from the living room, "Finian, who are you talking to in there?" My grandmother walked in, and as she flipped on the light switch, the dim yellow bulb slowly brightened. In that moment, I watched in horror as the figure of my mother slowly faded, dissolving into thin air right before my eyes. I was terrified. I screamed and lunged at the empty space, trying to grab onto her. It was only then that I learned my real mother was not home at all. That house, it seemed, was cursed. It wasn't just one ghost, but many. My family argued constantly. We had no luck. My father poured money into renovating the house, but it seemed to actively fight back. The house would settle and lean to one side. It was plagued by infestations of insects and rats, and once, a large chunk of plaster from a wall exploded outward, injuring my grandfather as he slept. Finally, my family could not take it anymore. We sold the house for a loss and moved away, leaving behind a place where, it seemed, the dead never wanted to share their space with the living. The MOSHENZI. My name is Lin Mei Ling. Last year, I had to put my life in Taipei on hold to move to a small, damp village in the Alishan Mountains to care for my grandmother, who was beginning to get lost in her own memories. The village was quiet. The dense forests surrounded it like a deep green wall, and the fog almost never fully lifted, giving everything a hazy, unreal quality. The elders in the village were very superstitious, and they were wary of a city girl like me. "Don't go into the forest alone after the sun sets," a neighbor warned me, her eyes never leaving the dark tree line. "And you must always watch your grandmother. These mountains have eyes. They have the MOSHENZI." They told me the MOSHENZI was a mountain spirit, a creature that looked like a child but had the face of an old man. They said it wasn't evil, but mischievous, and that it loved to lure the elderly and children, those with weak minds, deep into the forest until they were lost. I, of course, just listened and smiled. Until one afternoon, as the fog began to thicken, my grandmother disappeared. She had just been sitting in the backyard in her usual wicker chair. I only went inside to get her a cup of tea, and when I returned, the chair was empty, the tea in my hands still warm. The whole village mobilized to find her. We split up, flashlights in hand, calling her name until our voices were hoarse. That night, I saw the village elders bring small plates of candy to the edge of the forest as an offering. They lit incense, muttering prayers, asking the MOSHENZI to return her to them. For 2 solid days, we found nothing. Guilt and fear began to eat away at me. On the 3rd day, a hunter found her. She was sitting alone under a grotesquely twisted old tree, miles from the village. She was alive, but very weak. Her clothes were filthy, and she had the dazed, vacant look of a lost child. As I ran to her, the first thing I saw made me want to vomit. My grandmother was picking up a handful of something from the ground, a mix of clay, moss, and black beetles, and happily putting it in her mouth to chew. We brought her home. After a warm bath and a bowl of hot porridge, she slowly recovered. That night, when it was just the two of us, she took my hand and told me her story. She said she hadn't been lost at all. She had been at a party with a new friend, a very sweet little boy. He was wearing a red shirt, she recounted, her eyes lighting up in a strange way. He appeared in the backyard and invited me to a feast. He said there was a grand party up in the mountains with lots of fun. She told me she had followed the little boy deep into the forest. The fog was so thick she couldn't see the path home, but the boy was always right ahead, darting between the trees, waving for her to follow. He led her to a small cave and told her it was his palace. He gave me the most delicious food to eat, she said, smacking her lips in memory. He gave me crispy, juicy fried chicken drumsticks. They were so good. I shuddered, remembering the black beetles in her hands. And then he gave me sweet rice cakes, so soft and fragrant. I thought of the handful of damp clay and moss. She said she had stayed there and played with the boy the whole time, eating her fill. But there was something strange about him, she whispered, her voice full of mystery. Even though he was small, his face, it was wrinkled like an old man's. He would smile, but his eyes looked so sad. After hearing her story, I had no more doubts. The legends the villagers told were true. The MOSHENZI was real. But luckily, my grandmother was home safe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the little boy with the old man's face and his feast of insects. Around midnight, I heard a strange noise from the backyard, a soft thump, thump, like a small ball bouncing on the dirt. My heart stopped. I crept to the kitchen window, which overlooked the backyard and the edge of the forest. Standing at the edge of the garden, right where the dark forest began, was a small figure, a child in a red shirt. He wasn't looking at the house. He was playing by himself, tossing a small pebble into the air and catching it. But then he stopped. He slowly turned his head as if he could feel me watching him. He was staring directly at the window, staring directly at me. He didn't wave. He just slowly raised his small hand and opened his palm. Resting on it was a single black glistening beetle. And then he smiled. A wrinkled, ancient smile that did not belong on a child's face. He was inviting me. His empty wheelchair. In my childhood home, we had a rule. You were never, ever to go into the basement alone. It didn't matter what sound you heard, whether it was the sound of something being dragged, a whisper, or a child crying. My name is Cole. When I was young, my family moved into an old house in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a 2-story house with a large, damp basement. My father, a strong man who never believed in ghosts, claimed the basement as his personal wood workshop. But from the day we moved in, my father began to change. At first, it was small things. Every time he went down to the basement, he would trip and fall in the exact same spot for no reason. Over time, he started to suffer from unusual high fevers. The most horrifying part was the sleepwalking. My mother would often find him fast asleep on the cold concrete floor of the basement. The climax of it all was when my father was diagnosed with a rare form of polio that partially paralyzed his legs. The strong, capable man who was the pillar of our family was now confined to a wheelchair. So he could continue to work, a relative helped us install a freight elevator, a simple lift that connected the living room directly to his workshop below. While digging the foundation for the lift, our relative found a few small bone fragments. Thinking they were just animal bones, he threw them away. The elevator was installed, and it brought with it a new kind of terror. My father said that many times while he was riding it alone, it would just stop midway, leaving him suspended in the darkness. Another time, he felt a hand reach up from the basement floor and grab his leg, pulling with incredible force, but no one believed him. Until one night, my father suddenly shook my mother awake, his voice filled with panic. "Honey, who's that standing in the elevator?" My mother looked at the lift with its wire mesh door, but she saw no one. My father, however, was terrified. At that exact moment, the elevator started on its own, its motor whirring as it slowly descended into the basement. The next morning, my father was nearly insane, rambling on and on about the girl in the elevator. Finally, my mother believed him. She knew a ghost in our house was trying to torture my father. That night, after everyone was asleep, my mother went down to the basement alone. She didn't light a candle or say a prayer. She just stood before the dark, silent elevator and whispered into the blackness. "I'm sorry," my mother cried. "We didn't know. We disturbed your rest. Please forgive us." It seemed as though the apology had worked. For a week after that, nothing happened. My father even began to calm down. We decided we would sell the house and move away, but we could not leave. Every time a potential buyer came to see the house, strange things would happen. They would hear a child crying from the basement. They would feel an icy chill the moment they stepped through the front door. No one dared to make an offer. Our "for sale" sign was mysteriously torn down and broken every few days. The horror did not stop. It escalated. My father no longer just feared the elevator. He began to hear the girl's voice, whispering to him from the dark corners of the house, and then it started coming for me. I began to hear whispers coming from the vents that connected to the basement. At night, when I'd look into a dark window, I would sometimes see the reflection of a little girl standing right behind me. The worst of it happened late one night. Our whole family was jolted awake by the sound of the elevator running. We rushed out into the living room. The empty elevator cage was slowly rising up from the basement. My father was gone. His wheelchair was still there, sitting right on the spot where the bone fragments had been found. We called his name, searching everywhere, but my father had vanished, as if he had never existed. At that moment, from the dark abyss of the basement below, came the faint, echoing giggle of a child. The great-grandfather's prophecy. In my family, we have a strange inheritance. It is not money or property, but a barren piece of land and a prophecy. The words were uttered by my great-grandfather on his deathbed. When the river stops and the road screams with steel, its value will be known. My name is Anya. When my mother was a young woman, She was the one chosen to inherit that land, not because she was the most beloved, but because she was the only one who believed in the prophecy. The land was in a remote rural part of British Columbia, Canada. It was worthless. A small, fallow garden, a narrow dirt road, and a shallow river in front. Everyone in the family, including my Uncle Arthur, my mother's older brother, mocked her for it. Uncle Arthur, who was deep in gambling debt, repeatedly pressured my mother, even getting violent at times, trying to force her to sign papers to sell the land and split the money. But my mother, with an iron faith in her great-grandfather's words, absolutely refused. During one argument, she ran to her great-grandfather's grave. She stood there crying and said aloud, "If you do not want me to sell, please give me a sign." At that moment, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in. A bolt of lightning struck the old tree right next to the grave, splitting its trunk in two. My mother took that as an undeniable sign. Years passed. My mother married my father, and I was born. Our life was a struggle, and we were very poor. The land remained dormant, generating no income. In desperation, my mother sought out a medium in town. During a seance, the woman suddenly began to tremble and spoke in a deep, raspy voice that was not her own. "The land is sleeping. When the river stops and the road screams with steel, its value will be known. Do not sell before then." The prophecy was repeated. My mother nearly gave up hope. But a year later, the impossible began to happen. The provincial government announced a massive new development project. They were going to build a hydroelectric dam on the river in front of our house. The river stops, and a new highway would be constructed right through the area, the road that screams with steel. My mother's land, once worthless, was now at the very center of a major project. The property value skyrocketed overnight. The compensation money alone for the portion of land seized for the road was a fortune. Uncle Arthur, upon hearing the news, came back demanding his share of the property. My mother, out of a sense of family duty, gave him a share far larger than her own, hoping he would change his ways. But she still did not sell the remaining land. She went back to her great-grandfather's grave. This time she just stood there and whispered, "I think it's time, Father." As she finished speaking, a robin, her great-grandfather's favorite bird, flew down and landed on the headstone. The real estate market at that time was frantic. My mother would put the land up for sale at an astronomical price, then withdraw it, driving the local developers into a frenzy. Finally, she sold the land for an unbelievable sum, enough to change our family's life forever. That money gave my father the capital to start his own business, and he became very successful. My mother never had to worry about money again. She stayed home, took care of me, and invested wisely. We never knew how our great-grandfather could have had such incredible foresight. Was it truly a blessing from the world beyond, or just an unbelievable coincidence of fate? I don't know. I only know that thanks to a strange prophecy, my family was given everything. One body, two sisters. In my small hometown in Vermont, there were two sisters, the oldest women in town. Their names were as unusual as their lives. The elder was Prima, the younger Secunda. They lived together in a decaying wooden house, half hidden among the maple trees. Their lives had been nothing but tragedy. Their husbands and sons had all been lost to wars. Their grandchildren had moved away and never returned. The two women depended on each other, surviving on a meager government pension, rarely seen outside, almost cut off from the world. When I was a boy, my mother used to say, "If you see those ladies need help, lend them a hand. Don't let them stay all alone." Then one day, Prima passed away after a long illness. Her funeral was quiet, barely attended. From that day on, Secunda grew even more withdrawn, as if half of her soul had gone with her sister. But weeks later, strange things began to happen. Each evening, walking home from school, I would see Secunda standing at her gate, motionless, staring down the empty road. Her silhouette in the fog chilled me to the bone. The first time, I gathered the courage to speak. "Mrs. Secunda, why don't you go inside? It's cold out here." She turned her sunken eyes toward me and whispered, "Go home." The second time, she wore a bright blue coat, far too striking compared to her usual black rags. She stood tall without her cane. When I tried to guide her inside, she shoved me away with a shocking strength no frail old woman should have had. "Leave me alone," she barked, her voice low and guttural. "I just want some air. Don't you dare drag me in." I bolted in fear, but the third time was worse. She was back in her black clothes, trembling and weak. I remembered my mother's words and offered her my arm. That's when she muttered under her breath, Don't go in there. She's still inside. She yells at me, curses me all night." My skin crawled. At the door, she clutched my hand desperately. "Stay with me a little while, please. I'm so scared." I panicked and ran. Days later, I saw her again in the blue coat. This time, she called out to me, her voice unnaturally loud. "Hey boy, your family's roasting chicken, aren't they? Smells so good, bring me a drumstick." I froze. My house was far away. No scent could have carried that far. I lied, promising I'd bring some, then fled. But when I arrived home, the scent of roasted chicken hit me. My mother had just put one in the oven. That evening, as we ate, my father remarked, "Strange, today is my brother's death anniversary." I lit a candle for him. A chill ran down my spine. That night during dinner, a pounding rattled our front door. A hoarse voice cried out from the yard, "Give me a drumstick! I'm starving!" We froze in terror. Neighbors rushed out to see. There was Secunda standing at our gate, eyes bulging, clawing at the air. She screamed, demanded chicken, then suddenly collapsed. When she awoke, she was confused. She remembered nothing. Then the pieces fell into place. That blue coat, it had belonged to Prima. Her ghost hadn't left. Whenever Secunda wore black, she was herself, frail, fearful, trembling. But in the blue, she wasn't Secunda anymore. Her voice changed, her strength grew. It was Prima, loud, greedy, restless, unwilling to move on. After that night, we took Secunda into our home. At first, she seemed relieved, but within a month she grew restless, insisting she had to return. "I must go visit my sister," she whispered, eyes fixed on the distance. We had no choice but to bring her back. That night, lights flickered on in the abandoned house. Neighbors swore they saw two figures in the living room window, one in black, one in blue, sitting side by side, murmuring softly as if they'd never been apart. The next morning, Secunda was found dead in her rocking chair. Draped over her shoulders was the blue coat, carefully placed as if by loving hands. From then on, no one could live in that house for long. Tenants complained of voices, bickering, laughter, footsteps in empty halls. At night, some swore the kitchen filled with the scent of roasted chicken. And if you listened closely, you'd hear a raspy voice at the gate. "Give me a drumstick." The hanged neighbor. Quinn's family was, for most of her life, the Chicago dream personified. Her father, a charismatic man, was a lion in real estate. Her mother, ostensibly, was the perfect homemaker, but in reality, she was the financial brains behind it all. She had an uncanny ability to smell money. Her father brought home the big checks. Her mother turned them into an empire. Quinn's mother didn't trust the stock market. She trusted things she could touch, brick and mortar. When her father bought a new sports car, her mother quietly bought a studio condo in Lincoln Park. When her father upgraded their boat, her mother purchased a 3-flat in the suburbs. And then, at the height of the 2008 financial crisis, when there was blood in the streets, her mother made a move. She used a secret savings account, covertly formed a shell LLC, and purchased a foreclosed property in the middle of nowhere, a rural, isolated patch of Wisconsin, a small bungalow on a large plot of land completely isolated. It was her ace in the hole. For a rainy day, she told the broker. And then the rain came. Quinn's father started attending seminars in Las Vegas. First, it was quarterly, then monthly. He started coming home smelling of stale cigars, expensive whiskey, and a quiet desperation he couldn't quite hide. He was losing. Big. The arguments began. Quinn, then in high school, would lock herself in her room, turning her headphones up as loud as they could go, but she still couldn't drown out the sound of shattering glass and her father's roars. The Lincoln Park condo? I sold it. The market's stalling. The suburban 3-flat had to liquidate. Brick by brick, the empire crumbled. Her mother fought. She tried to hold it together, but a gambler in a deep spiral is a black hole. It swallows everything. By the time Quinn was a freshman in college, it was over. The last property was sold to pay off shadowy Vegas creditors. They divorced. They were left with a small settlement. Standing in the empty Chicago apartment, her mother turned to Quinn, her eyes dry but exhausted. "We still have one place," she said. "My ace in the hole. The house in Wisconsin." Two of them drove out of Chicago. They left the city of skyscrapers and broken promises, heading north, where the cornfields stretched out into infinity. The house was a farm-style bungalow, painted white, sitting in the middle of nowhere. The closest neighbor was another house, similar in appearance, about 50 yards away, separated by a tall, rotting wooden fence. "We'll fix it up," Quinn's mother said. "We'll start over, just the two of us." She hired a local construction crew, and to escape the reality of their new life, mother and daughter decided to take a trip, a 2-week healing journey along Lake Michigan. But the calls started. Quinn heard her mother on the phone, her voice growing tighter. "What do you mean you walked off? I'm paying you good money." "Spirits? Are you kidding me? It's just an old house." "Fine, I'll pay double. Just get it done." The first crew quit after 3 days, leaving their tools behind. The second crew did the same. Her mother had to call a crew from a town over an hour away, pay them double the rate, and they only agreed to work during the day. When they returned, the house was freshly painted, clean. But it held a cold that had nothing to do with the Wisconsin weather. They decided not to socialize. They needed time to heal. They had only each other. And because of this, they had no idea that the house next door was abandoned. Had been for a long time. The first week was silent, but only during the day. At night, both Quinn and her mother heard it, the sound of creaking footsteps on a hardwood floor from the neighbor's house, the muffled static of a TV turning on and then off, the beep, beep, beep of a microwave, the clinking of dishes. They told each other, it must be a night shift worker. They just keep odd hours. They clung to that explanation because the truth was too terrifying. Meanwhile, Quinn was fighting her own battle. Her boyfriend Noah was still in Chicago. He was jealous. He didn't understand why she'd vanished to the middle of nowhere. One evening, Noah called repeatedly. Her mother was crying quietly in the living room. Not wanting to add to her mother's burden, Quinn took the phone out to the backyard. It was twilight. The air was cold. The backyards were separated by a tall, private wooden fence, old and rotting. Quinn was pacing, trying to explain to Noah. "You don't understand, Noah. My mom, she needs me." She was mid-sentence when she felt it, that prickly, awful feeling of being watched. She stopped. She glanced at the fence. Right at her eye level, there was a hole, a knot hole that had fallen out, leaving a dark, perfect circle. Except it wasn't dark. Inside that hole, she saw something glistening, wet. Quinn held her breath. It was an eye, a human eye, wide open, unblinking, staring right at her. Quinn let out a small gasp, stumbling back. "What?" On the other end of the line, Noah said, "Quinn, you okay?" "Nothing, just a spider." She forced a laugh. She looked back. The knothole was dark again, just an empty hole. She must have imagined it, a trick of the fading light. She continued the argument. A few minutes passed, but she couldn't shake the feeling. She glanced at the fence again. This time, she looked at a larger gap where two of the wooden slats had warped. She was there. A woman, about her mother's age, stringy hair, standing perfectly still on the other side. And as Quinn watched, the woman, slowly, tilted her head. A slow, deliberate tilt, as if her neck had no bones. Quinn whispered into the phone. I have to go." She hung up. She ran inside and bolted the back door. Just a nosy neighbor, she told herself. A creepy, rural busybody. But deep down, she knew it wasn't curiosity. The next night, around 10 p.m., her mother was asleep. Noah called again. "Quinn, we need to talk." Quinn, terrified, still had to go outside. She couldn't talk in the house. She stood with her back to the fence, trying to keep her voice calm, but it was like a magnetic pull, a sick compulsion to check. She slowly turned. She was there again, still at that same gap, but something was different. Her head was tilted all the way to one side, a full 90-degree angle, as if it was broken, and she was swaying, a gentle rocking motion back and forth, like a pendulum slowing down. Quinn, as if in a trance, walked closer to the fence. She wasn't talking to Noah anymore. She had to see. She pressed her eye to the gap, and she saw the full scene. The woman wasn't standing. She was hanging from a thick rope, thrown over a rafter of her back porch. Her head was tilted. Her shoulders, oh God, her shoulders. They were shrugged all the way up, high up to her ears, as if she was trying to shrink away from the noose. Her feet were dangling above the ground, toes pointed, swaying. Creak, creak. And her eyes were wide open, locked directly onto Quinn's. Quinn dropped the phone. Her scream tore through the Wisconsin night. She ran to her room, not daring to tell her mother. Her mother was already too fragile. She couldn't add this burden. She told herself it was a hallucination. A few days passed. Quinn tried to pretend everything was normal. Then one morning, she woke up in agony. Every muscle in her body ached as if she'd run a marathon. "Quinn," her mother said, her voice full of worry, "what's wrong? You look pale." "I don't know. I'm just so sore." Her mother hesitated. "Last night, I think you were sleepwalking." Quinn froze. "Sleepwalking?" "Yes," her mother said, her hands trembling. "You scared me to death. I took a video." Her mother held out the phone. Quinn pressed play. The video was blurry, lit by the nightlight. It showed Quinn. But it wasn't Quinn. Her body was standing pressed against the bedroom wall, standing on her tiptoes, completely rigid. Her shoulders were shrugged up to her ears. Her head was tilted all the way to one side, and on her lips was a smile, a wide, grotesque, blissful smile. Her mother whispered on the video, "Quinn, honey, what are you doing?" The figure of Quinn just stood there, Her mother said she tried to shake her, but Quinn was hard as a rock. She had stood like that for 5 minutes. Quinn was horrified. The entity, it was mimicking. It was teaching her how to die. But she still said nothing. She was too scared. She just secretly bought some sage online, trying to cleanse the room when her mother was at the store. It didn't work. That silence nearly got her mother killed. The climax came a week later, in the middle of the night. Quinn was dozing, half awake, and she felt a sharp kick to her leg. She opened her eyes. Her mother was getting out of bed, but she wasn't moving normally. She was on her tiptoes. In the dim moonlight, Quinn watched her mother glide across the floor to the wall. She faced the wall for a second. Then, in one single, fluid motion like a ballet dancer, her mother spun on her toes, turning to face Quinn. And then, the transformation happened. Slowly, her mother rose higher on her toes. Her shoulders shrugged up, her head tilted to the side, her mouth spread into that wide, awful smile. And then, her eyes snapped open, locked right onto Quinn. It wasn't her mother. Quinn screamed, "Mom, no, you get out of her, leave my mother alone." She was crying, screaming, trying to pull at her mother, but her mother's body was rigid, cold, and just stood there, on her toes, smiling and staring. It lasted for an eternity. Then, suddenly, like a puppet with its strings cut, her mother's body went limp, collapsing into Quinn's arms. She blinked, dazed. "Quinn? Why are you crying? What am I doing standing here?" This time, Quinn didn't hide it. She told her everything, sobbing. That night, they didn't pack. They fled. They drove straight to a Motel 6 on the highway and hid. The next morning, her mother called the administrator of her LLC, the one who had helped her buy the house. "The house next door," her mother asked. "What happened there?" The manager sighed. "I was afraid of this. That house. It has a history. A tragedy." And she told them. The family had a mother, an older daughter, and a younger son who was an addict. The son had gambling debts, Vegas online casinos. The older daughter worked 2 jobs to pay off his debts. It was never enough. And the mother? She relentlessly guilted the daughter. "You're the oldest. You have to save him. Do you want the loan sharks to hurt him?" It was identical. The exact same story as Quinn's family. One night, the older daughter, financially and emotionally destroyed, walked onto the back porch and tragically took her own life. The rest of the family moved out right after the funeral, abandoning the house, abandoning her spirit. A spirit full of rage and despair, looking for anyone who could understand her pain. Quinn and her mother never went back to that house. They sold it at a loss. They moved back to Chicago, but not to their old life. They rented a small apartment in Cicero, a working-class neighborhood. Her mother got a job at a bakery. Quinn finished school while waitressing. The money was gone, but they had each other. But Quinn says that, to this day, she can never sleep with her back to the wall. Dirty magic. This story begins when I was about 6 years old, and it's tied directly to my father's downfall. What I'm about to tell you is what I remember, pieced together from my own memories and from what my grandmother told me later. It starts at my mother's funeral. Before that, my parents were the family's little legend. They met at a prestigious engineering school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, back in the late 90s. Both were rising stars in the early days of computer science. My father, David, and my mother, Elise, were brilliant, but they weren't a couple, not at first. They were a trio. The third person was Hannah. The 3 of them, my dad, my mom, and Hannah, were an inseparable project group. They pulled all-nighters coding, they graduated together. But after graduation, my father and mother fell in love. They got married, and Hannah was cut out of the circle. They didn't hang out with her anymore. A few years later, I was born. I'm Leo. Throughout my childhood, I heard my mother's jealousy flare up more than a dozen times. My father was a handsome man, and my mother knew it. "Are you looking at her, David?" my mom would say. "Is she as pretty as your Hannah?" "Elise, don't be ridiculous," my father would sigh. "That was ages ago. Hannah was just a friend. Her personality was just overly friendly." "Overly friendly? I had to guard you all through senior year," my mother would grumble. The name Hannah always hung in our house like a warning, but I had never seen her face. The year I turned 6, my mother died. A car accident on the Mass Pike. She didn't die instantly. She was in a coma at the hospital for about 10 days. I remember my dad driving me to the hospital one afternoon. He said I had to visit her so she could hear my voice. He pushed open the door to the ICU, very quietly. My mother was lying there, still, hooked up to tubes, her head wrapped in bandages. But she wasn't alone. A strange woman was standing by the bed. She wasn't crying. She was looking at my mother and smiling. A cold, contemptuous smirk. My father froze. "Hannah, what the hell are you doing here?" She turned, the smile still on her face. "I came to see. This day finally came." "Get out," my father hissed. "Get out before my wife." "Your wife?" Hannah scoffed. "That should have been me, David. If you had chosen me, maybe this wouldn't have happened." My father lost control. He lunged forward and slapped her hard across the face. "Get out!" The slap was loud, but Hannah didn't look hurt or ashamed. Her face went blank. She just straightened her hair, and as she walked past me at the door, she stopped. She bent down, the smile gone, replaced by a strange, twisted tenderness. She reached out and stroked my cheek. "Be good, Leo. Aunt Hannah is leaving now." I shivered. It was the first time I had ever met my personal demon. A few days later, my mother passed away. At the funeral, Hannah showed up again. She wore a striking black dress and sunglasses. My father spotted her immediately. "Who let you in?" he yelled, causing everyone to turn. An elderly relative intervened. "David, please. She was an old friend. Let her pay her respects to Elise. It's the right thing to do." My father stepped back, clenching his fists. Hannah walked up to my mother's portrait, where a memorial candle was burning. She stood there for a long time. Then she said, just loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Elise, you're gone. But don't you worry. I promise. I'll take care of David and Leo for you." And then she blew. She extinguished the candle. In the dead silence, she turned and walked away. My father was shaking as he rushed up to relight it. A year passed. My father struggled with being a single dad. He compensated by buying me toys. Life was stabilizing. Until my first day of 2nd grade. My dad picked me up from school, and she was there. Hannah. She looked different, hotter. Crimped hair, a short skirt. She was pressing a bubble tea into my father's hand. "I just wanted to see how you were doing," she said, her voice sweet. "Your wife is gone. You need someone." "I don't," my dad said, but he looked exhausted. "Just drink it. I made it for you, for old time's sake." Just to get rid of her, my father took the cup. When we got home, I saw him, distractedly checking his email, drink the entire thing. It all started from there. About 2 weeks later, Dad started picking me up late. He'd be whispering on the phone to someone. Then one day, I saw him drive up with a woman in the passenger seat. She wore sunglasses and a mask, but I knew. "Just a friend, Leo," he said, his voice distant. 2 months later, at a restaurant, my father made the official announcement. "Leo, this is Aunt Hannah. From now on, she's going to live with us to take care of you and me." Hannah smiled and handed me a chicken nugget. And I have to admit, the first 6 months were paradise. Hannah was the perfect stepmother. She cooked incredible meals. My school clothes were always ironed and smelled fresh, something my dad never managed. She bought me the newest video games. She gave me extra allowance. I started to love her. It wasn't until I was in 3rd grade that I realized the truth. My father changed. He wasn't my father anymore. He lost weight, rapidly. His eyes were sunken and dark. He was always in a state of sluggish fatigue. He stopped hugging me, stopped playing with me. He pushed everything onto Hannah. Go ask your mom, Hannah, to do it. And I noticed a bizarre pattern. For about 20 days of the month, He was my dad, just tired. But for a specific 10-day period, always 10 days, he was like a mindless cat. Whatever Hannah said, he obeyed without question. One night, I heard them arguing. Then, the sound of thwack, thwack, thwack. I got scared, crept out of bed, and peeked through the crack in their bedroom door. The old door had a gap. The sight is burned into my brain. My father, the strong man I adored, was kneeling on the floor, his arms crossed, his head bowed. Hannah was sitting on the bed, cross-legged, holding his belt and repeatedly striking him across the back. "Are you going to listen to me? Huh? Are you going to talk back again?" I stood there, trembling, tears silently streaming down my face. After a few minutes, she stopped. "All right, get in bed." My father, like a puppet, sluggishly stood up, climbed into bed, and immediately fell asleep. The next morning at breakfast, they were laughing and kissing. I stared at the red welt on my father's neck. "Dad, what happened to your neck?" He touched it. "Huh? I must have slept on it wrong. It's sore." Hannah smiled. "You were sleeping like the dead, honey. Probably just a wrinkle in the blanket. Eat." My father had no memory of being beaten. That day in the car on the way to school, I told him, "Dad, last night, I saw Mom Hannah hit you." My father slammed on the brakes. He turned around, his eyes severe. "Leo, you do not tell lies. Your mom Hannah loves us. You're little. You don't understand adult things. Don't you ever say that again." He didn't believe me. A few weeks later, I found out the ingredient she was using. It was a Saturday. I was home from school. My father was on a business trip. It was just me and Hannah, and it was just about time for my father's 10-day empty phase to begin. Around noon, I went to use the bathroom. I forgot to knock. I pushed the door open. Hannah was sitting on the toilet. She was changing her sanitary pad. I froze. I was a kid, but I knew I was seeing something private, blood in a white pad. She screamed, "Leo, get out!" I slammed the door shut, my face burning. I stood outside, mortified. A minute later, she came out, holding a small black plastic bag, a garbage bag. She ruffled my hair. "You have to knock next time, sweetie." She walked past me, but she didn't go to the kitchen trash can. She took that little black bag into her bedroom. I thought it was strange, but I forgot about it. The next afternoon, my dad got home from his trip. "God, I'm beat," he said. "Hannah, can you make me some tea? I miss your tea." "Of course, my love." I watched Hannah go to the kitchen, but then she stopped, darted back into the bedroom, and came out a moment later holding that same little black bag from yesterday. She went back to the kitchen. I couldn't see what she was doing. Her back was turned. She bustled around, then brought the cup of tea to my dad. He drank it all in one gulp. That night, and for the next 10 days, my father was gone again. The breaking point came when I visited my grandmother, my Nonna. She lived in Boston's North End, the old Italian neighborhood. Nonna was deeply religious, but she also believed in the Malachia, the evil eye, and the old Sicilian curses. She never liked Hannah. "That Strega, that witch," she'd mutter while kneading dough. "I don't get it. Your father, so smart, and he brings home that trash." She looked at me. "Leo, at home. Does she ever feed your father anything dirty?" The word dirty clicked in my head. "What do you mean, Nonna?" "You know, old magic," she said, lowering her voice. "The women from the old country, they did it to tie a husband down. They use their blood, the blood from the month, to bind a man." A lightning bolt hit my brain. The black plastic bag, the cup of tea, the 10-day vacant stare. "Nonna," I stammered. I saw her. I told her everything. My Nonna dropped the spoon. She grabbed me, her eyes blazing. "Mamma mia, that putana, that devil, she dared." When I got home, I don't know what possessed me, maybe my mother's spirit, but I did the stupidest thing possible. I asked Hannah directly. "Aunt Hannah, did you give Dad your dirty water to drink? My Nonna said so." Hannah's smiling face froze. For the first time, she lost her composure. She screamed, "What did you say? That old hag is lying. You..." She saw the fear, but also the challenge in my eyes. She realized I knew. And she made her fatal mistake. She slapped me. A hard, stinging slap. "I forbid you from repeating that. I'll tell your father you're being disrespectful." She hit me. That night, I didn't tell my dad about the dirty water. I just cried and said, "Dad, Mom Hannah, she hit me." My father was in his zombie state, but those words, they cut through the fog. The love for his child was stronger than the curse. He stood up. You what?" He stormed into the bedroom. "Why did you hit my son?" For the first time, he yelled at her. He slapped her back. They had a terrible fight. Hannah ran into the bathroom crying and locked the door. My dad hugged me and took me out to buy a new toy as an apology. But that night, I knew I had angered the demon. I heard the thwack, thwack, thwack again. This time, no yelling. Just the steady, rhythmic sound of the belt. I crept to the door and looked. The scene was even more horrific. My father was kneeling. Hannah was standing over him with the belt, striking him. But that wasn't the worst part. My father had something in his mouth. A white, soiled, stringy object stained with dried blood. I recognized it. It was the used sanitary pad. She was beating him and forcing him to hold that filth in his mouth as punishment for defying her. I threw up right there in the hallway. 2 weeks later was the one-year memorial for my mother's death. My Nona had arranged a plan. She convinced my dad that, by tradition, the memorial must be held at her house. She invited the whole family, and she insisted my dad bring Hannah. Hannah arrived looking victorious, as if she had my father completely under her control. The memorial was underway. My grandmother, in front of everyone, walked over to my mother's memorial corner. It wasn't an altar, just a small table with her photo, a crucifix, and several prayer candles. "Hannah," she said, her voice clear, "you want to be a daughter of this family, yes?" Hannah smiled. "Yes, Nona." "Don't call me that," Nona snapped. "My only daughter-in-law is Elise." She pointed to the photo. "You want in this house, you need her permission." "What? What are you talking about?" my dad mumbled, still in a haze. "Light a prayer candle for her, Hannah," Nona commanded. "Ask her. If she accepts you, if the candle burns bright, I will accept you. If not, you get out of my house." It was a perfect trap. In front of dozens of people, Hannah couldn't refuse. She trembled as she picked up a match. Everyone held their breath. She muttered something. "Elise, I love David, truly." She struck the match and brought it to the wick. Crack! The candle didn't light, it shattered. The moment the flame touched the wick, the thick glass votive exploded into 100 pieces, extinguishing the flame. But Hannah couldn't run. She screamed a terrifying guttural sound. "Ah, it's cold! Let go! Elise, you're choking me!" She collapsed, her hands clawing at her own throat, as if fighting an invisible hand that was squeezing the life out of her. "It's choking me!" "Speak!" my Nona roared like a judge. "What did you do to my son? Did you give him your blood?" My father was stunned, the shock of it all seeming to wake him up. "Hannah, what is she talking about?" Choked by an unseen force, in agony and terror, Hannah confessed everything. "Yes, it's her fault. He was supposed to be mine. She stole him. I gave him my blood to make him see who he belonged to." The entire room was silent. My father collapsed into a chair, his face chalk white. "Oh, my God, Hannah, you..." The second the confession left her lips, Hannah shrieked one last time and fell backward, gasping, unconscious, as if my mother had let her go. Nona pointed at the door. "Get her out." My father, still dazed as if by habit, moved to help her. "David," Nona screamed, "if you walk out that door with her, I will die on this spot. I will never see your face again." My father froze. Our relatives dragged Hannah out. That night, Nona wouldn't let us leave. She forced my father to stay at her house for a month. "You stay here," she said, "and you flush that poison out of your system." She gave him holy water, she took him to church. But mostly, she said, his body just needed to expel it through natural waste. Nearly a month later, my father was finally, truly awake. He sat in Nona's kitchen and wept. "Oh my God, Ma. I don't remember any of it. What did I do?" Hannah tried to come back. A few weeks later, she was at our house, kneeling on the doorstep, begging, crying. My father, now himself, called the police. She even dared to send him another bubble tea, the exact same kind that started it all. My father walked out, threw the drink in her face, and told her if she ever came near me again, he would kill her. We never saw Hannah again. My father recovered, at least on the surface, but I know that curse left a permanent scar. Sometimes, I still see him staring motionlessly at his morning coffee before suddenly dumping the whole thing down the sink. He never says why. As for me, I grew up, but that taste, the faint metallic tang of old blood, it's still in the back of my throat. I still have nightmares about it. My father, kneeling, trembling, and the thing Hannah forced into his mouth. Every time I see someone desperate for love, I don't see romance. I just see that hunger, that filth, and I wonder how much they're willing to defile just to get what they want.